Howdy, howdy, howdy. Testing one, two, this thing on. Thank you, Joe. How was everybody's long weekend? It got cold AF here. I'm not a fan. Welcome, welcome, welcome. What's up? What's up? What's up? Interesting week ahead we have here. Uh, I am interested to see how we are going to pan out this week, mostly because the first 2 to 3 weeks tend to set the tone for the rest of the year. And we are at that third week mark. Only big news we have this week, I think, is retail sales, which I mean is considered a red letter day or a red envelope day. We'll see. I think we're gonna have some interesting retail sales numbers, and I think we're gonna probably see that people aren't spending as much money right now, but it could surprise me. I'm not sure who's speaking this week, um, unless it is uh, Powell. I don't really care. Um, let's see. Yeah, I don't see anybody on the list for market mover people type. Let's see if I put that on there. Yeah, I'm not really seeing much of any consequence as far as Fed speakers. So unless Powell is speaking, I don't really take notice. So this week we just have core retail sales, and then next week we have GDP, and then the week after that we have a Fed rate meeting. So Isaac, my weekend was long, very long weekend, but it's a pretty good weekend. Kids have been home. It's been cold. Get to spend a lot of time inside, just hang out with them, have a good time. Oh, and in the last week of January runs into February 1st and 2nd, and we get a jobs report that week too. So Tuesday the 30th through February the 2nd, it's going to be a turbulent week. We got the Fed funds rate FOMC meeting and unemployment rate in the jobs numbers that Friday. I live in the Minneapolis St. Paul area of Minnesota. Minnesota. There's no D in Minnesota. How about you, Jose? You live where it's ridiculously cold as well. I am not liking the cold, but yes, they are sub-zero. The wind chill right now is 23 below. I just posted it. I don't remember what it was. Hmm. 25 below right now for wind chill. Yeah, that's cold. At this point of the year, it's cold until like March, April, sometimes May. All right. Welcome everybody. This is the Sunday Night Market Scan. I am a Joe named Joe. You may call me by my government name, Joe. Pretty easy name to remember. This is the lecture where we go over basically the major tickers that run the market, anything else that we may be expecting for market movers, such as news or any of the sort, and see what we can see for some movement in the market. It is a pretty solid name. I like it. It's pretty cool. All right, so we'll get some of these last ones from last week off. I'll leave Disney because I want to touch on that. At least take a look at it. Leave the banks. And we already got some possible size there. General Motors and Chewy. Take a look at those. If anybody else has any requests, toss them out there. I'll add them to the list and we'll get to them in the order in which they were received. I do have a few videos on how to use unusual whales. You can find them on my X or Twitter profile. You can also find them on my YouTube, Joe named Joe, on both spots. Spy and QQQ are on the list. We will get to those shortly. You are welcome, Jose. All right. If anybody has any questions while we're going through, feel free to toss them in the chat. I may finish up whatever it is I'm saying, and then I will get to the question. But do not hesitate. T, we'll toss T up there too. Why not? We'll toss it up there for Dirty River. Take a look. There's been some bullish flow on T, so it's going to be interesting. All right, I like to work my way from a top-down perspective. I usually start at the weekly chart and work my way down into the daily or the 1 hour chart. If I see trades that I like, I'll put them up there in the form of a long or a short trade, which is what this green and red box is. The green area is the price target area, and the red box is the stop area. The line in the middle that separates them is the entry. These are just ideas that I have based on what I'm seeing on a chart. They are in no way trading alerts or signals. This is not financial advice, and I am not a financial advisor. Affirm, I will put on the list. SPY is in there. We'll get to Tesla too. Tesla's interesting. Okay. So Apple came down, triggered the long, pushed up. I was looking for it to come into this gap right here. Let's see if I can see it a little bit better. So I'm actually going to remove that. I am a fan of trend bar gaps, or also sometimes referred to as fair value gaps, depending on which person you have come across on the internet. As taught by a man named Al Brooks, when price makes a move that's large enough to create a gap between the previous candle's high wick and the subsequent candle's low wick, that is considered a trend bar gap, as he refers to it. Okay. The idea is that it is an area of imbalance in price. Price moves so fast, it is considered an area that price could retrace into, which could be a nice setup for a potential trade. Looking at Apple, we have 3 gaps in a series. We have our first one, which is referred to as a breakaway. The second one is a measuring. Then the third one, which is an exhaustion gap. After the exhaustion gap, we tend to look for a reversal. That's what we got on Apple. It tried to flag out, didn't quite do it. broke to the downside. Came into this measuring gap, the second gap here, hit the middle, held it, and now we're pushing back up. Last week was an inside week, meaning that price is high, and the low price, were within the range of the previous candle. If you hear an inside week or an inside day or an inside hour, that's what it's referring to. The last candle, the price did not exceed the high or the low of the previous candle. Okay. Yes, Marvel went on a rip, and there was somebody who knew that. That was a fun one. I enjoyed that trade. That was fun. So Apple came down off of the exhaustion gap, bounced into this measuring gap on the middle, bounced, held it, and then we got an inside week. So right now we're looking for there. I have a pretty good feeling there's going to be a move on Apple to the up or the downside. I'm not in the business of predicting, but I do tend to look at what the information is being given to me and try to see if I can figure out where I think my price might be going. We did reject this order block up here, which I assume is on the daily. I should have marked it properly, but I did not. So we came down, rejected the order block, pushed down. Now we pushed back up last week, and we're still within the range. So we're consolidating. Prices tightening up. Okay. I did want to take a long here at this price right around 182.94. That is the setup that I'm currently in, and I'm looking to ride it up at least into this order block. We'll see if we go further all the way up to my price target, which was the same high that we had up here. I am looking essentially for Apple to try and take 200. We'll see if it happens. They've got a lot of things coming up. They're having some woes. I think they just canceled a product. iPhones are not as popular anymore, and they have some reworking to do. So just keeping an eye on that. Basically, the way that I'm seeing this is right now Apple is consolidating on a weekly level. So I'm not really into taking a trade on it right quite yet. Other than the trade back up to 200, which was triggered. And we'll see if we get it. My stop is right around 179, 178.9, somewhere in there. AMD is on the list. We'll get to that. Okay. So I'm looking for some upside on Apple this week. That is what I am looking for. AMD is doing essentially what I thought it might do. It pushed up. We double topped right around 151. It's kind of chopping its way back down here. I thought it might kind of chop through this block here, this gap, and then see if it's going to support or not support price. Right now, it doesn't seem to be, or it does seem to be supporting price. This gap does. So we got price come down, took out all these stops, ran up, tried to take a new high. It did not take a new high, and it came right back down. So looking at this on a larger scale on a weekly chart, I have a feeling Apple or AMD is going to come back down. I really am. I would be willing to take a short on it, depending on what the risk reward is here. Down to these lows around 135 is around a 2.45 risk reward. Not the biggest fan of that. I might adjust my stop to the top of the last day, Friday's high. That seems to be a bit more adequate. Let's take a look at it on the hourly chart as well. So the hourly chart is telling me a little bit different of a story. The hourly chart almost wants to, it looks like it's flagging essentially. So let me clear some of this out here. I would definitely be watching AMD. Actually, I'm going to cancel that previous short. AMD feels like it's flagging right here. I know there's currently some issues with Taiwan. They just elected a new president, which is pro-democracy. The U.S. apparently has reissued its resolve to help Taiwan. So all of that geopolitical stuff is going to affect semiconductor companies. Okay. AMD is a semiconductor company. They also do a lot of business in CPUs as well. But for the most part, they are considered a semiconductor trade. So keeping an eye on that. Before we go any further on AMD, watching this flag, I'm just going to check out NVIDIA. NVIDIA is tightening up here on the 1 hour. This definitely is feeling to me like it's going to want to try and push in one of these directions at least. Okay. So keep an eye on AMD. I think AMD is probably going to be the stronger setup. AMD is also the market mover. It just went to new all-time highs. It just went on a ripper from 470 all the way up to 547. And now it's consolidating in a pennant or triangle or whatever technical term you want to use for that. It's a market structure is what it is. So I would watch NVIDIA for a break of this flag. See if I can see anything on the daily. Nothing really. Consolidated on the daily. Ripper on the weekly. Took out everybody above here and it stayed up here. So it's feeling pretty bullish. This is a pretty bullish candle right here on the weekly. Checking it out on the daily. It might pull back a little bit. It might fill in some of these imbalances here. But for the most part, I'd be looking for this to try and push up. It's something that I would wait and see. I would watch the 1 hour and wait for a break of the trend, probably in the morning or at the end of the day when the most volume is. And if it wants to break this trend line and go, that's what I would be watching. In my mind, all of these technical setups are all 50-50 no matter what. You always wait for the break and trade the break. Amazon, also looking out at the 1 hour here, also feels like it's flagging. It's been pushing up against this price a few times now. Hasn't been able to close above this previous price. Hasn't been able to get back up there. It's trying, but it hasn't quite gotten up. Right now, I am seeing that it did have a nice consolidation here. And right now it's pushed over and is consolidating over that. So in my mind, it feels like it might want to go up. It is trying to push through this gap on the 6-month chart that it has rejected already. It had to come down, reload. I was looking for a short, never got there, and it ripped back to the upside. So it's feeling like it wants 160. We're going to see what retail sales look like. That's going to be Amazon is going to be one that's going to be sensitive to retail sales numbers. So keep an eye on that. Again, another flag essentially on the 1 hour chart that you'll want to keep an eye out for. It's very similar setup to AMD or NVIDIA. Boeing having more woes, but it is getting to a point. I don't know if it's going to continue dumping. Volume is really dropping off here. As you see, after the news came out, they took a big dump. But volume is dying off. Volume isn't, as it's dropping down, price is going down, volume is going down too. So we might see investors step in here and prop price up. This consolidation area right here in this larger darkish colored gap has been more of a sensitive area as far as price ripped down to the downside, then it ripped back to the upside. Now we're coming back in. I'd look for a possible bounce up here. Taking a look at the monthly, it did. Hold on, I'm just going to turn that border off so I can see price. All these other gaps here are irrelevant at this point. We do have a price reversal to the downside. One thing I like to do when I see a price reversal is I like to take a fib retrace and where's my drawing settings? Hello? ¿Dónde está? Don't know. And measure out 50% of that. And then see how price reacts when it gets to that 50% line. So essentially, I would be looking for price to come down at least a bit more to the 210 area on Boeing. And then I'd be looking for some sort of reaction around 210. But for right now, I'm just going to keep an eye on it. Not quite trade it yet. We'll see what investors want to do with that one. Coin had a consolidation month so far. Let's take a look at the weekly. Definitely got a price reversal on the weekly. Came down, filled some of this gap out. It closed on the bottom of the gap. I think we're going to see Coin and the rest of these Bitcoin stocks come down. I mean, we were looking for a possible rip on news of the Bitcoin ETFs, and what ended up happening was what ends up happening sometimes is a very buy the run up and sell the news. Okay, so it had a nice run up based on anticipation of it. We got the final yes, they're here, and now we're getting a pullback. So we'll see how things want to pan out here. But we are approaching that 50% mark around 128.9 as well. So keep an eye on Coin, all those Bitcoin stocks as well. Meta getting the rip to the upside quite nicely, I might add. We're in a long back here, and it just kept going. I still think it wants 380. There's a lot of big money in Meta right now. I'm pretty sure it's going to want to take out this high, and we might see new all-time highs on Meta. This isn't something that I don't think is going to be bothered by retail sales at all. So as far as Meta, I feel like it's going to want to take out its previous all-time high here and continue up. That's my take on Meta. Meta continues to the upside. Microsoft hitting new all-time highs, pushing out of this pennant that we were watching last week, ripped hard coming out of there, set new all-time highs, and it consolidated on that Friday. I don't see why Microsoft would stop quite yet. So I'd be watching for more upside on Microsoft. And looking at all these big stocks, you might not trade Microsoft, you might not trade Amazon, you might not trade Boeing, but these are big players in the market, and these are the ones that move your ETFs like SPY and SPX and control the market. So if we can get a grasp on where Microsoft and Nvidia and Tesla are going and all these companies, we have a pretty good reason. Like, we can form a good daily bias or a good weekly bias actually, as far as where we're going to go next week. So I'm looking for Meta and Microsoft to continue up. Same with Nvidia. I'm not sure it's done yet. It might want to make one more leg up. I think it might want 560. The only reason I think 560 is it's a nice round number. We're up here in more price discovery area. We ripped all the way up above 400s, chopped around for a long time, cup and handled right up out of the harmonic, and then just ripped to new all-time highs. So this is something that I would watch, see if investors want to run it up some more, see if they want to pull it back. Definitely keeping an eye on Nvidia this week. It's going to help us see where the markets are going to go, especially tech. Roku, I thought, was going to want to get up into the 109s, but that did not pan out. Roku decided that it wanted to go and stop me out on my longs, which is fine. I'll get stopped out on a trade, I guess. On the weekly here, it is pulling into this gap on the monthly, which is a high bounce area. So I would look to possibly take her long around 82 and maybe try and target some of these highs again. But this is also something that we had the breakaway, the measuring, and the exhaustion gap. Now we're getting the price reversal and the pullback into the middle of it. So Tesla getting that pullback here, tried to break out, didn't quite break out, got rejected, blah, blah, blah. Couldn't get over that 50 line and close the deal at all. And now we've got news coming out that Musk wants to increase his holding to 50%, or what is it, 25% of the company holdings, or he can go do stuff elsewhere, is what he said publicly. Honestly, I think Elon has his hands full with with Twitter or X and SpaceX. I think it might be good for him to step away from Tesla and let them run the company. We'll see if that happens. Don't know. It may or it may not. But we did reject this imbalance here that we tried to fill earlier. Now we're coming back down on the weekly. To me, this just feels like it's going to come back down. I'd be looking for at least 200s, possibly 180s on Tesla this week. Yeah, it would make sense for it to come down. I take that trend line there and I duplicate it here to the downside. Yeah, that makes sense. And delete some of this stuff. Yeah. 200s, 180s, definitely doable, in my opinion. Okay. Big picture SPY stuff. So this is a great example of where we had the 3-gap system going up, the breakaway, the measuring, and the exhaustion gap. We got to the exhaustion gap. We started to turn and pull back. And last week they just ripped it to the upside and hit new all-time highs. I still think SPY wants at least 482, and we'll see if we actually get there. But this is a nice pullback reversal to the upside on the weekly. It feels like it wants to just continue going up, and we'll see if we get it there. On Thursday, we got that nice buy up on the bounce or the drop down, then the buy up. Now it's still trying to push up. The Qs, we had a similar situation. We had the 3 gaps. We got the very small pullback and then a push up to the price target. And now we're kind of waffling back and forth. I think the Qs are probably going to see some upside still, and it's going to be on the backs of NVIDIA, Microsoft, and Meta, and probably Amazon as well. I do not think Apple is going to be. I think Apple's going to be more of a question mark. I said I wanted a long on that earlier, but I still think it's going to be a bit more of a question mark with their stuff. I think the markets are going to be pulled up by NVIDIA, Microsoft, and Meta this week and going forward. IWM small caps hit that previous high, which we were watching on the weekly here, pulled back pretty violently. Last week was kind of a so-so week, right? We basically closed where we opened. There wasn't really much there. We just kind of went down a little bit and came back. So keeping an eye on IWM if that's something you want to trade. Small caps, I am bearish on it. I essentially think it's going to probably at least come down to the 182s into this middle trend bar right here. If not, all the way back down to 162 and continue to take stops out along the way because that's what it's been doing. It came down to here in October, took all these stops out here, ran it up into the end of December, took everybody's stops out there, and now they're going to run it back down. We'll see what else they want to do with that. But I don't think small caps are quite there yet. We'll see. Boomer stocks ripping again. Just gap after gap after gap on the way up here on the weekly. 3 gaps, 4 gaps. Gap, gap, gap. Then we got another gap. And we don't even have a price reversal yet coming off the diamonds, off of boomer stocks. So if this is something that you trade, I do tend to trade the Dow Jones futures, but they are definitely doing some heavy work here. They're hitting all-time highs as well, and they are starting to carry this, but they haven't been able to quite push up a little bit further over the past few weeks. It's kind of, hitting a wall here around 377, 378. So keeping an eye on that for a price reversal. How would I trade that? I'd look at something on the weekly, and I would look, if you notice, like it tends to get bought up right around this closing price right here. at 373 mark. It hasn't quite closed below that yet. It's dipped below it twice, but it hasn't gotten the close. So if we get a close below 373.29, 373.30, I'd look for a push to the downside. Not a massive push, but definitely down into like the 370s. And at least trying to get into a little bit into this trend bar gap here, this green box, as well as retest those previous highs. Goldman Sachs banks can't hit new highs coming out of there. This is something that we've been watching for a while. And this is why I think banks are going to end up rolling over here. We haven't been able to take out these highs from last November. It's been 3 weeks that it's tried to, and it hasn't. I'm guessing Morgan Stanley is going to be looking even worse because Morgan didn't even get up to those highs around 101, 100. So, and they've got a price reversal here on the weekly as it's come down and taken out the last 3 weeks of price. So I think we see some downside in the banks, and Goldman and Morgan tend to be some pretty big hitters and leaders over in that area. Netflix still can't get into that 500 area. I'm still looking short. I don't think my Netflix has what it takes to get above 500. It's proven it a few times now. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times it's tried to get into 500, and it just can't quite get there and hold it. So I think it's going to want to roll over. I think it wants to come back down to around 346, maybe at least a few weeks, maybe into February, possibly March. And Goldman and Morgan do have earnings. Yes, we have a lot of bank earnings coming out this week. We kicked them off last week with JP Morgan and Bank of America. And we're going to have a lot of the larger banks as well as a lot of the smaller banks reporting this week. So keep an eye on XLF. If XLF is something you trade, you got some small body candles coming in here. I wouldn't be opposed to taking some puts into the 36 area and look for a pullback. I really enjoy trading XLF. The contracts are cheaper. If you don't really have the money or the premium to trade your Goldmans or your Morgans or your JP Morgans, XLF is pretty nice. I like doing that. So I wouldn't mind taking a short as these bodies start getting smaller and smaller. I wouldn't mind taking a short into the 36s on XLF this week. But that's my opinion. Affirms on the list. Would I recommend futures over options for someone with a day job? No, I would not. Futures, the thing with futures is it's leveraged, and unless you are able to know exactly where you want to get in, where you want to get out, and where you want to take profit, and you set the bracket order and you can walk away, and you have that in your mentality to just walk away and be done, and whatever happens, then fine, give it a whirl. But for the most part, futures trading does tend to be a bit more hands-on, in my opinion. I do think it tends to require a bit more attention. So if you're looking to get into futures trading, maybe paper trade it first and see if it's something that you can turn profitable, and make sure you can do it for a while, not just be like, oh, I turned $5,000 in paper. This is clearly I know what I'm doing. No, you don't. See if you can do it for a year and then try it, but definitely start with paper. Start with paper first. And all right. So Disney, I think, wants to continue in this. Let's get rid of, what is that? Come on. It's got this channel to the downside. I think it wants to come into February 2016 lows here. And I think it wants to take off from there. So that's the setup that I am watching on Disney right now. I don't tend to trade channels, but if channels are something you want to trade, knock yourself out. I tend to like identify a level and go from there. So I'm looking forward to come into around the 87, 86 area, and then look for some increased volume and buy up at that area and then take a long. That's what I'm watching on Disney. All right, General Motors had this nice consolidation area. Uh, I think Ford said that they were cutting their EV line, right? I don't know exactly. Ford's not something that I trade consistently. Um, but these big companies are having a rough time, especially with where used car prices are, and like people just don't want to like put the money that much money into a used car. Um, I mean, I feel it's looking like a nice push up to like the 44s, back up to the top of this consolidation area, and it got the breakdown below that trend, got the buy up and the push back up. But how would I short General Motors tomorrow? Based on this setup, I don't think I would short General Motors tomorrow. It's holding this order block right here, or at least this candle, not necessarily an order block, but it's holding that right there. So maybe a short under 35 down to like 34 and fill this gap. But I don't even know if I would day trade. I don't think I would day trade General Motors. I maybe like take a short and see if it gets there, but yeah, that's not like a ridiculously good setup. A lot of sell volume going into the close there. Yeah. On the plus side, looking at a bit more of a granular level, let's take a fib retrace from up here down to the bottom. See where we're sitting. So from this last high to this low, we've pushed back up. And here's what I'm seeing right now. So not only have we pushed back up, I'm just gonna go ahead and delete those gaps. Not only have we pushed back up, but we have this area of big butt. We have this area of consolidation right here. Make it a different color, right? We have this area of consolidation right here that it broke to the downside before hitting these lows and then coming back up. And now we've pushed over that area of consolidation and we're consolidating over the consolidation. You see that? So right now price is moving sideways over this previous area. If it were at the same level or under, I would be a little bit more skeptical. But looking at this, being that we're over the 50%, we're over this previous area of consolidation, I would actually look probably for a long up to around 41 and maybe set a stop like right around this previous low. It's right around a 2.9, right around a 3-to-1 risk ratio. Or you could look for a pullback and pull back into that 50 and then take a long from there. But if I were to take this trade right here, I would get some time, at least maybe 30 to 60 days on the contracts, and then target maybe 40 for a strike to get that push up to 41 so I can be in the money. At the same time, it's far enough out that it's a lower cost, and a lower cost, higher reward type of scenario. But I like that. I like that for a buy up back to 41, looking at the 1 hour. You can maybe even do 30 days since it's a 1 hour chart. Chewy. Coming into increased volume as price is dropping. I think it at least wants to take out these lows around 1686. That's where I would think it's going. I hope that helps. Yeah. Definitely feels like it wants to come back down to 1686. Set up for tomorrow. I mean, I just take some puts and write it down. I'm gonna look at an options chain for them. I'd maybe look at February's, and what's that price? 1686. February's 17.5 puts. Grab a few of those. Ride that down. Let's see what I'm gonna check out Unusual Whales here. I'll check out the February 16th 17.5 puts because there's some volume and some open interest there. I just want to see what other people have done with this as well. 17. What? No, is it 17? What? I selected 7.5 puts. That doesn't do me any good. Okay, well, looks like on the 10th, somebody sent out a bunch of covered calls around 3,000 contracts at the 41 price. So they might be expecting, or not covered calls, cash secured puts on the 17.5s. So they might be expecting it to not get anywhere lower than that. On December 15th, they also sold 1,800 contracts for these 17.5 puts. So I'm guessing either someone doesn't expect Chewy to go much lower than 17.5. That doesn't mean it's not going that direction. What it could just easily mean is that it's not going to be in the money. What do you need, boy? What you need? Hey, Popo. Hey, Popo. All right. So that's what I'd be looking at. They're in those contracts at 41 and 57. And right now those contracts are sitting at 56, 57. So looking at Chewy, that's what I'd be expecting. T has seen some pretty bullish options flow. But this setup right here just makes me think it wants to come down more. And what I'm seeing right here is this big candle to the downside here on Thursday with higher volume. And then this little bounce here with what is maybe just a little over half of the volume of this previous down candle. So this makes me feel like it probably wants to continue down. Look for a short, maybe under 1630 for a move down to 1615. And then I'd be looking at, probably 1580s. I know Dirty River's probably going to be mad, but it is what it is. That's what I'm seeing. This is also one of those companies that when it dips, it tends to get bought up. So every time it dips, it gets bought up, bought up, bought up, bought up. Affirm. If you're new here, I don't have a very good. Hold on. The dog's into something. I don't have a very good. I don't like Affirm and Upstart. I think they're bad business models, and I mean we're looking at a soft landing. I just don't see it. I don't see the value in these companies, in my opinion. But I mean, they did get this big volume here, the big push up, holding this top right around here on this previous high. I wouldn't mind taking a potential long off that previous high there. Oops. Then where are we targeting? At least this previous high here, which we already went through. You're looking at highs up here. So maybe something like that is what I'd be looking for, pushing to 70 on Affirm in the next coming weeks based on this price action. SPX, I mean, is just the same as SPY. Still looking for that push up. I think SPY still wants 482, at least 42 and a half. So SPX, you're looking at what? 48.80, somewhere in there. No, I can't chart up, dog. What's up, dog? SoFi, we're on a broadening formation here. Thanks, Aaron. On the pullback, I mean, this is another company that I'm not really too much into their business model. Based on the weekly, it wants to come down to around 6.5, 630. Based on the daily, I mean, you got the pullback. I think it wants to come down. This is definitely looking like it wants to come down, in my opinion. So I'd be looking short on SoFi around to the 650s, 680 mark. AVGO, Broadcom hasn't quite finished that long that I've been watching up to 1173 or so. Did get that the full setup was the pull into the 618 and then the rip up to the previous high, and then it's just taken out every deviation since then. So price action. That's a big area right there, in my opinion. You see, we haven't gotten the close above that. We did get the peak. Let's try, what do we got here? It's right at that 618. I wouldn't mind taking a short on AVGO. Set my stop somewhere around 1151. And I'd look to target. Well, actually, I mean, I'd look to target 1042. But that's not a very good risk to reward here. Can maybe drop my stop to around 1128. Try and get it closer to 3. But that would be the trade that I'd be looking for. Yep, I've discussed all those. IWM. I'm looking for some downside on IWM. Following the weekly chart. It pushed into this previous high while we're still in this range. Now it's coming back down. I'm still looking for it to come down. I would expect it to at least hit 180, if not, the 160s in the next coming weeks. As far as the rest, SPY, yes, I think SPY wants 482 coming into the next week or so. And Tesla, I think, wants down. I think it's in this flag here, nice down channel to the downside. We'll see if Elon wants to move and leave Tesla. If Elon wants to leave Tesla, we might see Tesla down in the 120s, maybe even sub 100. But he did make a note saying that he may want to take off. AMD, we're looking at a flag. And for AMD, I suggested a possible short, but it's going to move with NVIDIA. And NVIDIA, I think, wants some more upside, but it's currently in this pennant. So I would watch NVIDIA to see if AMD is going to go up or down, because I think it's going to travel with NVIDIA. All right. And the last one on the list was PayPal. PayPal just chopping along here. Nothing really to report there, other than it's down horribly over time. I mean, it does have a little bit of an inverted head and shoulders there, doesn't it? Head and shoulders. Where are you there? Did I just not see it? What's going on? Head and shoulders right there. Okay. It's a bit wonky, but it is there. It's not exact science, but looks good to me on a break of that called it 63.5 to 63 3/4. Maybe even call it 64. If you see a break of 64 with volume, I'd look for some upside. At least into the 70s, back into this gap right here. We'll call it 64. Into that gap. Right around there. That's what I'd be watching on on the PayPals. All right. So taking a look at futures markets right now. Let's take a look at futures markets. It got the dip below the previous all-time high here. Now it's just kind of chopping along. It's making me feel like we might see some downside in the London session and then get a buy up in the afternoon session or the New York session, as it were. Options contracts I'm watching this week. ESI, February 16th, 22.5 puts. They've got a long way to come down. Their volume increased quite a bit. And somebody went ahead and put $138,000 into those puts on Friday. So interesting number there over on ESI. Also, SMCI, somebody put 3.2 million into covered calls for February 23rd at the 350 strike. Somebody I think made a rather large bet. I have to wait for the open interest to update on Tuesday. But the Tesla January 19th 225 calls had a ridiculous amount of volume show up all in one shot. Which is kind of making me second guess the downside on Tesla, but it could just be a hedge. We'll see. And then Delta Airlines had January 26th 40 calls. What was what edit? I'm not sure what that means. So DAL January 26th 40 calls. It's about $850,000 into those on Friday. Right around 57. Somebody hit them twice. Looks like they want some upside in Delta. As long as that updates. So if the open interest updates to around 15,000, 14 to 15,000 tomorrow, then I'd look at getting maybe one or two of those contracts. There's still a ridiculous money in Bank of America, 621.15 puts, right around, I don't know, multiple millions of dollars. The open interest is around 212,000 on those contracts, and they are right around 3 to 4 cents a contract. So if you want to trade some downside in the banks, somebody's got a pretty large bet on Bank of America going to the downside or a sizable hedge, depending on how you look at it. ESI. Yes, ESI contracts that I saw. ESI February 16th, 22.5 puts. Somebody put in $138,000 into those on the ask. How did I target ESI? It simply came through my filters on unusual whales. I wasn't looking at the chart or anything. It does have, I mean, just looking at the chart right now, it does have these previous highs that it broke out over that it might want to come down and check. But right, those were options contracts that I spotted. Spotting some whales out there. All right. Anybody got anything else? AMC to 0. But chipped? Nah, I don't know, man. At this point, I'd just be looking for a buyout on chipped. It's so fun. It's so beat up. Charge point. What strike for Bank of America puts? There's a lot of money on the June 21st 15 puts. Relatively low cost, high reward, possible trade there. Obviously, don't bet the bank on that. Never go ham. Would I short SPY tomorrow? No. I would not short SPY tomorrow. I think we're going to get a pullback overnight, and I think we're going to push up next week into all-time highs. We have a lot of earnings coming up. Banks are reporting, and we have some heavy hitters coming out as well. Let's see. When is Amazon's? Amazon, I think, is in February. Yep. Microsoft also in February, end of January. AMD is also in the end of January. So I send a lot of stocks. TCMI is really similar to SMCI, which is a semiconductor stock, which had a lot of covered calls go out on it. So they're looking for some downside on that, possibly. Take a look at the dollar. Dollar definitely falling down here. I think the dollar wants 95. And if we see the dollar continue to push down, that's going to spell some upside in the equities market. So, all right. There's nothing else. Feel free to ask anything you'd like. But if there's nothing else, I'm going to give it the standard 7 seconds or so. And we'll call it a night. You're welcome, Isaac. You're welcome, Alan. Oh, my. Cecilio? You're welcome, Whitey. You take care as well. See you in the Discord. If you ever have any questions, highlight me, highlight the staff, ask whatever question, even if you think it sounds stupid, ask it anyway. Okay. You guys have a good night. And gals, non-binary pals. Anybody? All right. Good night.